All right, folks, welcome to another episode of Mirror Coffee Roaster warm-up sessions. And this is going to be a fun one.
That's it.
Is that it?
Sergi just rocked a beautiful intro. I was like, I'm not doing this intro. I feel tired. Sometimes you just get annoyed of hearing your own voice. It kind of sucks when you do like a podcast and you're like, why are people listening to my voice? I don't know. Anyways,
Okay.
I'm gonna be thinking about that for the next 30 minutes, but hopefully not. We're gonna talk about what are we gonna talk about? Well, you obviously have seen the title of the video of whatever we're gonna title this, so you'll know. But I don't even know how to even word it. What is it?
Like a thesis statement, I think.
No, it's not that serious.
No, it's more or less about like if we were to ever walk away from coffee, go into a different industry, what are some skill sets that we've learned and received running at Mirror that we can transfer into another career?
Exactly. Because I think at the end of the day, man, like one of our wholesale accounts, Bobby, shout out to Bobby. I don't know if you're listening to this. He said something really interesting. He's like, he said that like the job and where I'm at right now in coffee is a stepping stone to where I ultimately want to be. And that is actually, that kind of a mindset, I think is actually really powerful. Because it both brings purpose to where you're at right now. And then it also gives you the inspiration to keep going
for sure.
For the future. So I mean, lately, without getting too far into it, but lately I've been thinking about this concept of context and how you're living in the context of, your past, and you're living in the context of your future, and you somehow happen to be right here in the middle, in the present. And so how do we learn from the past and aim towards the future and let that define that tension between of those two things, let that define what you're doing right now, and use it as inspiration.
Kind of reminds me of my one-on-one with Justin today.
Interesting.
Yeah, very similar concept.
Yeah.
Side note, did you know that the reason Justin's at narrative basically trickles down to the Mirror Coffee Roasters warm-up session podcast?
I don't believe it. I don't know. Justin, if you're listening to this, you need to confirm with me next time I'm at narrative. Wow, that's delightful. That's wonderful. That's powerful. All right, let's pour some batchy. What do we got on batch? Well, we have some Rugwave Coffee Roasters right out of Canada with some tasty packaging. If you're watching this on YouTube or on Spotify, here you go. You're seeing it. It's really nice. It's like a little sample pack.
Is that a kettle? Is that a lake?
Yeah, it's a kettle. It's like pouring into a lake. There's a miniature human. I actually like this. It's kind of artsy.
Yeah.
I like it. So shout out to Rugwave for some cool packaging of the sample bag. I ran into, I think, one of the owners. Man, how could I have forgotten his name? I think his name's Brian, but I could be completely wrong. But he's also the Canadian coffee roasting champion, if I'm recalling.
Really? Wow.
Sorry, not coffee roasting. Sorry, Brewers Cup
okay.
Yeah, Brewers Cup champion. I think so. Wow. Anyways, I ran into him at the narrative cupping, and funny thing is, I'm talking to Nathaniel, and he comes up. He's like, "Are you Maxwell Mooney?" And I'm like, "No, I wish I was, but I'm not. So I'm sorry to disappoint you." But yeah, it was great chatting with him and just hanging out, learning about what he's doing. Yeah. So, and he just hooked me up with a couple of sample bags. So this was just enough for one batch. So I'm pumped. So it's a Costa Rica honey processed. I should stop talking and give this a try.
Fun. First off, I'm glad you gave Nathan. I wonder if he likes being called Nathaniel. Maybe that's too formal for him. But I'm glad you gave him a little shout out there.
Why?
I don't know. 'Cause we always joke about him, like me using one of his quotes on the podcast, like by accident. He's a great character. I mean, that's completely random.
I don't know where you're going with that.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere
I'm
with
lost.
this. I just want to
confused.
talk about Nate so that
nice.
if he ever listens
shout
to
out
this
to
episode.
Nate. I don't know what you're doing listening to this podcast, but I'm honored if you're listening. But wow, makes me wonder. Like the coffee community up here is so fun. I love it. It's a pleasure. So I actually don't even remember the last time I had a Costa Rica. What about you?
I'm trying to. Well, there's a few Costa Rican coffees that like stick out. Las Lajas.
Right.
obviously, right? From Onyx, Las Lajas, from Happy Home. Carlos, shout out to Carlos. But those are so evidently natural processed coffees. Like, if you know anything about Costa Rican coffee, you know that the natural game, they kill it. They have an infrastructure for naturals. So that's what I think of when I think of Costa Rican coffees. But this isn't a natural. No.
It's a honey processed. Interesting. Before I even just picked this up, I'm getting some toffee on there, which kind of makes sense.
Okay.
Notes on the bag are marmalade, toffee, grapefruit, and jasmine.
I guess you get a little bit of the jasmine thing going on. Yeah.
I think the toffee is really hitting with me. I think that's actually pretty spot on. But yeah, really interesting. Yeah. I don't have enough Costa Rican coffee in my life. I don't know. I feel like I should be drinking more. It's one of those origins that I don't think gets enough hype.
Yeah.
For what it is.
It should.
It should. There's no reason why. This is
Costa
like a
Rica
really
produces,
solid batch coffee. Like, it's sweet. It's subtle. It's, has some nice, pleasant, like, little nuance going on. It's great.
Yeah. The Millenio or something varietal. Another new one.
Yeah, I've never heard of that varietal. Kind of actually reminds me of the guava we just cupped a little bit.
A little bit.
No? Oh,
Yeah.
just a little bit. I hear.
A little bit.
Like, I don't know why that's crossing my mind.
Kind of the orange
acidity
thing I was thinking about.
Yeah. So that's that. Rugwave Coffee Roasters. Haven't had them ever, so this is the first time. I hear a lot of people from Canada rave about them. I haven't been able to get my hands on some Rugwave because, well, they're in Canada and sometimes paying shipping over the border. I don't know why it's still so hard to ship and so expensive, but it is what it is. So yeah, shout out to Rugwave. Thanks for hooking us up. We still have a Rwanda sample from them that I'm excited to try. So, but
let's dive in.
I
think this idea kind of came out of Deja and I talking.
We need another shout out. This podcast is full of shout outs. We're getting a shout out to Deja. She at one point made a slight appearance in the background. She was a fact checker at some point. So shout out to Deja for this topic for today. So
she is switching jobs. So we were talking about like career shifting and the idea of having a skill set or building a skill set for multiple options within like your career or jobs or just options, right? So I think that's a hard thing for me to actually conceptualize, because I'm thinking, why would I ever leave coffee? That's not something I have in mind. But then some of the skills and some of the abilities that I've learned by working in coffee are definitely transferable to other avenues. Like, let's say I wanted to become a professional skateboarder. Well, okay, that's a bad example.
No, I think that's still valid.
Yeah. I mean, yes. Okay, let's just take that.
Let's just go with it. Yeah.
If I was a professional skateboarder and I was sponsored by my favorite skate company, let's say Girl Skateboards. I don't know. Do they still exist? Right?
They must.
Yeah. What if I skate for them and I'm thinking, and maybe I'll tag on like Burton, right? So two bigger companies. Okay, I'm not making any sense. But if I was doing something like that, a valuable skill set would be, again, I would have to know how to work with a team. I'd have to understand and know how to communicate what I want to do. And that's some of the things that you and I have been really learning and then practicing is like organization. And within that, communication. Like, the more organized you get, the better we can communicate. That's a pretty big deal, because you and I have a lot of these ideas. They're all in our mind, but sometimes they have to be organized and put in proper place. And when those ideas are organized, then you're able to execute and then communicate with whoever you're working.
Yeah.
So those kind of skills, it's a different form of organization. It's not the same form that I've experienced at other jobs where, I don't know, you go into a room and you organize a room with things, right?
Yeah.
This is more or less organizing ideas, creating priorities, those kind of things.
Systems.
Systems. Yeah, that's a good word. Systems, creating systems. and then being able to move forward with that because now you have room and space to do stuff. I think that's a big one. No matter where you're at, whether you're a professional skateboarder that needs to organize a plan for a tour. This is sounding too cheesy. I probably need to change it. So, take it away. Yeah.
No, I mean, I still think, whether you're, Shaun White or Tony Hawk, Bam Margera, whoever you are as a skateboarder, snowboarder, whatever it is, you have to be organized. Like, let's be honest. Like, what's a sloppy skateboarder got to do with anything, Like, or, on the flip side, you go and you find people that are good at that so they can fill that necessity in that hole, But that should never, ever be the case where you stop growing and stop becoming, a better version of yourself and learning from your experiences. And for us, it's a learning from running a coffee roasting company, running a business in general. And I think that's a really big one. Actually, I think that organization factor and creating systems and how to do things that's smooth, has been something I've also been learning a lot. And like you said, like there's so many ideas in your noggin and you're trying to hold everything together and you think you have to hold it all together, but really it's like the last meeting that we had, we just put it onto a piece of paper and I just felt like 60% of my brain was like empty all of a sudden. And now I'm like, okay, cool. That helped so much. I actually think apart from that, like I do like freelance, like video production and kind of social media work. And that's been also like a difficult factor is like, I feel like I always have to keep things in my brain all the time and remember all kinds of things. And at some point now, after forgetting, forgetting meetings, forgetting like stuff, like forgetting to grab, coffees for a cupping or whatever that's going to happen this evening or whatever it is, I've realized like I actually don't have to keep it all into my head. And that's why you have stuff like planners, like productivity apps that help you be more organized. And to me, that's a really big weakness I've learned about myself, but it's been a learning experience recently of how can I be more organized in that sense? And that's a skill I think even outside of Mirror, outside of running a business, whether that's in your relationships, whether that's in friendships, whether that's in, whether you're, doing some kind of community project or helping out somewhere, whatever it is, that's going to come into handy. Like that's just the case,
Yeah. That's a great one. I think another one for me is observation, like the skill of observation, is not only observing what's happening within your company or observing, I think roast curves, like that's one thing. Like we sit down, we see what happened. Yeah. We make these observations around roast curves. But then in general, also observing what's happening in the industry and then going even broader, like observing what's happening in the world, taking time to do that and actually like having the skills of seeing different things and looking for trends. That I think that would fall within observation. That's a skill set of can you see trends? Because for a business, like for us, knowing or kind of having a peek and understanding of like this could possibly happen is going to help us make better decisions for the future. Or even not even for the future when we're talking about 10 years, like for the next season of coffee that we're going to buy and preparing. So it helps preparation in general. So the ability to be able to see things and collect that information, process it, and then execute on that. So I think that's a big one. I think it's also, it sounds like it's pretty broad, but I think some practical steps that I've had to take in observation is listening to content that like voices and content that actually speak about things that are going on, like Lee is one of those people that she is always like sharing content and information that is very important to the general concept of what's happening in the industry. But then I think the roast curve one is, it falls in my mind, it falls under observation, but also under like data analysis, like being able to take in information, process it, and then come up with a decisive plan. I think that one has been very important to me. And I feel like if I was to move on to anything else, like go back to like full-time in like photography, it's the same concept. Receive that information, process it, and then be able to execute.
Do you think it's similar and kind of works off of like an attention to detail?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, do you think so? Do you think there's overlap there, or or are you kind of going in a different direction?
No, that's exactly a direction. But the ability to be able to practice observation and to be intentional about it, like focusing on that, like that's just to highlight a skill set that I'm like, okay, that's a highlight for me. Like I need to see what's going on. Even in the cafe, I think day to day, I have to be attentive, use attention to detail to collect that piece information, because that's a broad net, and something that underneath would be practicing proper listening skills. Because listening skills is a form of observation. You're receiving that information and then processing it and being very good at listening. I wouldn't say I'm excellent at listening, but I've grown in listening and just sitting down with people, hearing what they've observed, collecting that information. Or maybe the better skill set wouldn't be observation, is like data analysis or like collecting information, maybe a better skill set. Yeah. So
what do you think, like, if you weren't so observative, like what are the benefits of just being a better observer? Like, I guess give us like a little compare and contrast with maybe Sergi 3 years ago as opposed to Sergi now. Totally. And how has observation played into, who you've grown into?
Better proactive decision making.
Nice.
That's a very easy one, because if you're on a broader scheme of things, like if you're looking at different perspectives and you're collecting information on, let's say, what's happening in the coffee industry during COVID, and you're seeing, this isn't, or this is working for these roasting companies, they're moving in this direction. You're collecting all that information and you're able to predict what it would work for you, like for Mir, right? We see different trends. I think you and I just have a very good skill at picking up trends, like what's happening in coffee and why is it happening? And then that gives us the information to make a decision, say, is that something we should jump on? Or actually, could that potentially be just a trap for unnecessary spending in our business?
Right.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
But if we weren't observing those things, if we weren't picking up on those trends, then we would potentially make bad decisions or miss a good decision. Yeah. And I think that's a universal skill that's good for, if I was to start photography business, again, that's an easy one. That would be super important for me to understand. Like Silas and I were talking about the fact, like, this year's going to be pretty busy with weddings, and we see it ramping up because of these things we've noticed. Or, COVID lockdowns are loosening up, so therefore we need to prepare for this. It helps make those decisions in a proactive way, but all of that starts in observation. Yeah. That was a long rant. But.
That was a long rant. Yeah. But we'll take it, folks.
Sorry.
We'll take it, folks. No, that's wonderful. I mean, you said it well. There's also so much that's also going through my mind about that, is that that's like a really powerful skill to have, and taking information and then being able to connect the dots, even though they're not actually connected, I think is very, very good in the grand scheme of things, and just about anywhere you go. I think one thing that I've for sure have grown in understanding is I feel like I've become a much fuller person running Mir. Like I've become so much more well-rounded running this business that's intricate, that involves, international markets, that involves, logistics, that involves, just like a global industry, that you kind of have to be aware of all the things that are happening. Like I said, whether that's shipping logistics or even stuff like global, like weather, or climate, or learning a little bit of like this earlier today. I was on a Zoom call. I was learning some chemistry, and what's happened over the last 3 years is I've just grown to understand of how complex systems are and how complex businesses are and how complex the world is and how it functions. Like I'm starting to see a lot less. My perspective has become a lot less black and white and more of, okay, let's stop looking at things black and white, but going back to a little of your observation of like, let's learn about this.
Yeah.
Because there's very few blanket statements in the world, and to just say, well, this business is X, Y, and Z, or this business is not sustainable, or this business is sustainable, or this business is thriving, and why did that cafe go out of business, or or a hot topic right now is inflation. Like why are prices rising? And then you start. It's very easy to say, well, it's just because of inflation, but then it's like, well, yes and no, not really. It's not so clean cut. And what is inflation even? And how does inflation differ from CPI and all these things? And it's like, I've just like, because running a business is such a steep learning curve. Yeah. Like literally every day you're running and you're like learning things on the fly. And because of that big learning curve, I've just realized like, man, you just can't assume. You can't make assumptions so easily. Like before you start claiming things or calling somebody out or whatever it is, just think there's just so many layers to a lot of things.
For sure. Yeah, that's really good. And I think within that, if I can just riff off of that, I would say having the
Did you say riff off of that?
Yeah.
Nice.
Is that still a word?
I don't know, but I liked it. It just came out of like,
I
don't know, it felt like a surfer term, but it also felt like a guitar term, like a riff off of that. I'm like, anyways, go riff off of that.
I'm going to riff. And I would say the attitude that you're describing is like this teachable attitude, and the ability to be a student. Just being a student for life, not because you've automatically learned and know everything, but having that ability to recognize the necessity to remain a student at heart. So you're always taking in information. You're always wondering. You're always curious. You're always asking questions. Yeah. Those are just such an important skill set for success, no matter what you're doing. I mean, a plumber needs to do that. You know what I mean? A gardener needs to do that. Those are important skills to have, is to be teachable. That falls, again, under the category of having good observation skills. And what you're talking about, as a business owners, economics has never been more important for us. Yeah. Like, I don't know, if I would have stayed in my previous career, the idea of studying economics maybe would have crossed my mind because money is involved. Yeah. But it wouldn't be so important to understand what's going on, because part of economics is understanding like consumer confidence. Like, is that like, are people going to still want to buy our coffee? Yeah. And how does that impact our business? Yeah. So those things are so much more important now. And I think those things can also take us, I mean, whether we do coffee or not, now we understand the broader picture of how the globe functions when it comes to money.
Yeah. And I think, actually, wherever you are or whatever you're doing right now for work or in life, I think something this has taught me is it's so much easier to be around people who are just intrigued, who are just learning, and who are seeking to understand and grow in their understanding about things, like whether you're an employee at a cafe, maybe you're just sorry, that was horrible. Whether you're a barista, like, instead of just assuming a lot of things, how do we say, like, why is this functioning? Why does this work like that? Like, why are we raising prices? Why do we charge for this? And why do we do that? Why don't we do free refills on batch? Or instead of just, okay, well, this is wrong, or I'm just gonna give up, or this is evil, like, how do we approach things with a little more understanding? And actually, it doesn't mean that you need to be complacent with it, but it's more like, how do you learn and understand the complexities of the system or the the organization.
Yep.
And then after you've learned, making a decision, and actually an educated decision on what do you want to do with it now. And actually I think that's a big part of like running a business, is like learning all these things, and then realizing like, okay, I have a better grasp of like budgeting now. How do we implement that?
Right.
Or what should I do with that? Or, you're roasting and you realize like, oh man, roasting is not just about, hey, it's light roast, we're going to drop it at this temp.
Exactly.
And then it's figuring out like, okay, this is way more complex. Learning, and as you're learning, realizing like, okay, how do I start implementing those things? Or what does that information do, And I don't know, that's been just like a really huge one for me that I'm so grateful. Like, and actually just like as we wrap up this episode, I think like I wouldn't, if you were to ask me like 5 years ago, I would say everybody should start a business. And nowadays I'm like, I don't know, not necessarily everybody should. Not everybody was born to be the CEO, and some people were born to be the CFO, or everybody was born, maybe you're a better manager than you are a CEO. Yeah. But what I will say is I actually do hope that everybody can at least try to start like a mini business. Yeah. Even if it's not like a full function, full on, operation. And because I think it gives you so much context.
Right.
And I think we just lack so much context in today's world. Yeah. I don't know why that just went there.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think with that said, like that's part of the thing that we want to do, one with this podcast, but with Mirrors of Brand, is to empower individuals to be able to take that step forward, whether that's into coffee, encourage and inspire people to step into coffee, or that's whatever they were wanting to do and hesitating on that. And is it worth a try? You know what I mean? And having those questions and doubts, and being able to inspire people to maybe take a chance, see what happens. Yeah. Not risk it all, but go with it.
One last thought. I think realizing that, once again, how we started the conversation about like wherever you are right now, you're actually, open yourself to learning. Mm-hmm. And then realizing that what you're learning today and what you can learn today will actually be able to empower you to take on what you need to take on tomorrow and in the future.
100%.
We both of us did not just start a roasting company in 2020.
Right.
What we did do is we lived 20, 30 years of our life and then realized this is the next thing that I think we should take on. But totally. It's built on 20, 30 years of life.
That's it, folks. Well,
there you have it, folks. Sergi, give us a wrap up as you gave us an intro. Give the people what they want. Yeah.
Well, folks, thank you for listening again to another episode of Mirror Coffee Roasters Warm-Up Sessions. Go ahead and give us a follow on YouTube, but go ahead also and get on Spotify. Give us a review. Tell us what you think. But also, Mark does this so much better than me. If you are listening and watching on YouTube, you should give us a comment. What do you think about these things? Yes. I'm trying to do my best James Hoffman voice. No. What do you think about these? Do you like dark? No. Anyway, what are some skills that you've maybe observed in other careers that you've transferred into other experiences? And how has that shaped and molded where you are now? Let us know. We would love to chat. Other than that, folks, I'm going to wrap it up with, remember, reflect what's good. Yeah.